Hey guys! Today I want to talk with you about the Stepford Wives. This satirical thriller by Ira Levin was released back in 1972, and this is actually my third book by Ira Levin that I have read. And to be honest, while I might have preferred Rosemary's Baby and A Kiss Before Dying over the Stepford Wives, I cannot deny the importance of the message of the novel, nor the excellence with which the novel has been written. While the novel itself is very short, just a little bit under 150 pages, it does leave a huge impact on the reader. And to understand the actual importance of this novel, you need to understand a little bit better the period of time that this novel has been published in. So in 1960s, second wave feminism movement began. It took place mostly in the Western world and lasted for roughly 2 decades. While the first wave of feminism concentrated on issues such as gender equality and legal obstacles women were facing at the time, such as voting rights or property rights, second wave feminism broadened the debate to include a wider range of issues. Second wave feminism concentrated on domestic abuse and marital rape, women's sexuality and reproductive rights, women's right to work and the inequalities women do face at their workplace, and so much more. And while the movement was not perfect, it was a step in the right direction. And of course, second wave feminism was met with a lot of criticism, especially from the male population. The idea of women leaving the house chores or childcare to their husbands while they themselves go off to work seemed scary to many men, just like the idea of women taking their lives or their sexuality in their own hands. To put it simply, an independent woman is difficult to control. Independent woman that has her own money, her own ambitions, her own opinions, a woman that can legally sue her husband for marital rape was scary to say the least. And that is what the Stepford Wives is all about. Since its release, the novel has been adapted to the big cinema twice. First time in 1975 and second time in 2004. As per usual, we will start this review with a short synopsis, then proceed into the non-spoiler review and wrap this video up with the spoilers. If you had not read this book yet, then do not worry, I will make sure to let you know when the spoilers begin. And just a quick side note, at least my edition of the Stepford Wives comes with an introduction by American journalist and novelist Chuck Palahniuk. And if you are not familiar with the story of the book, I would also suggest you to read the introduction to the book after you actually read the book. Just because in my opinion, the introduction includes at least one major spoiler that I would be happy not to have known before I started this journey. So, the Stepford Wives. In this novel, we follow Joanna Eberhardt, a young woman who is a wife, a mother, and a talented photographer. She and her family have just moved to a small and idyllic town of Stepford. And while from the first glance Joanna's life seemed to be rather perfect, as she has a job that she's passionate about, a happy and loving family, as well as a supportive feminist husband, soon enough Joanna starts noticing that fellow women in Stepford tend to behave rather strangely. Said women are borderline obsessed with household chores. They seem to be the happiest when they're cleaning and vacuuming and ironing and taking care of their husbands and their children. And while there's nothing wrong with taking pride in running a tidy household, this is the only thing these women ever do. If that wasn't weird enough, they do it all while looking like they just stepped out of the cover of a magazine. If you have seen any of my previous videos about Ira Levin's books, me saying that I just love Levin's writing style will not come as a surprise. I often adore books, but I rarely feel an attachment to a specific author. It rarely happens to me that I want to own and read each and every book, doesn't matter what these books are about, just because they are written by someone who practically never disappoints me. Up until now, I had 2 such obsessions, Tess Gerritsen and Stephen King. However, the more I read of Ira Levin, the stronger I feel like he might just become one of the ride or die authors for me. I just love to read with what an ease Ira Levin tackles incredibly serious topics. I love how his realistic characters get seamlessly intertwined with a plot that is filled with supernatural or sci-fi elements. I love how ahead of his time his ideas are and how they're still more than relevant to today's reader. But more than anything else, I just love the way Ira Levin builds tension. Now let me put it this way, I love my boyfriend. I do. Yet every time I open an Ira Levin book, I can't help but start suspecting that my boyfriend is planning my slow demise. Because that's what Levin's books do to you. they make you paranoid. And the Stepford Wives is not an exception. Ira Levin took a topic that was extremely sensitive at the time and ran with it. He gave us a good idea of how old school patriarchy sees a perfect woman. He showed us that these men are not ready for an equal partner. What they want instead is someone completely submissive, someone who would always put their husband's needs above their own. These men do not need a wife to help them through important parts of life. No, they want someone brainless. Someone who will be completely fulfilled just by polishing silver or waxing the floors, and who love doing it in heels, push-up bra, and a red lipstick. And while the author is not painting all the men with the same brush, he does make it pretty clear that there is still a significant amount of men out there who think like that, who are not ready to lose even tiny bit of control. I mean, it is rather crazy when you think about it, that this book, this short 150 pages novel, has made such an impact on people that even the term, the Stepford wife, has been added to a dictionary and adapted to describe in a derogatory manner a woman who is a perfect, submissive housewife. Now, I can't really continue on talking about this book without actually starting to speak about its plot, and therefore I think that now it's a great time for us to move into the spoiler review. If you haven't read this book yet, but you think that you would like to do, which I highly recommend, and now it's a perfect time for you to click off this video. Now, there are many things that happen in this book that I can understand, to some extent. Not to justify them, but to understand them. First and foremost, I can understand the fear men might be feeling. I understand that their world is changing rapidly and that the idea of women gaining rights can seem like they are losing some of their own rights. Once again, I do not justify this. But it's a sad reality that practically every social movement throughout the history has been met with counter-movement that would allow people to resist the change. Just to name a few, the second wave of feminism was met with the supporters of anti-equal rights amendment. The Black Lives Matters has been met with All Lives Matters. The pro-choice was met with pro-life. LGBT movements were met with an absurd number of religious and social oppositions. And the list is truly never ending. That being said, I do understand that change is scary, and when it comes to picking a side, there will always be people who will stand against the progress. Consequently, I do understand why the men in the Stepford community behave the way they do. They're not only afraid of the change, but they also surround themselves with only other men who are equally as afraid of the same change, which doesn't allow them to gain a better perspective. To some extent, I can even understand that wish to have a perfect partner. And while the definition of a perfect partner differs from person to person, I can see how to some men that partner might be a completely submissive housewife. But what I can't understand is how the fuck would you do what Stepford men are doing to someone you love? How would you do that to a woman that you have been married for 10 years? A woman who is the mother of your children. Am I supposed to believe that the children will not understand that their mom was replaced with a hotter model that talks less and doesn't complain about the never-ending laundry? This book, more than anything, made me believe that Stepford men hate the woman they married. Now, we do not know much about the home lives of practically any of the men who are involved in the scheme, but we do get to know a little bit about Walter's and Joanna's dynamic as a married couple, and they seem happy. Yes, Joanna is rather independent, she has her own personal aspirations, career, hobbies, but she's still someone whom at least I would consider to be a good wife and a good mother. Throughout the book, we see that she still cooks, still cleans and does laundry and takes care of their children. She hand sews the costumes their children need for the Christmas play. She does the grocery shopping, Christmas shopping, and she's the one who sends out the Christmas cards as well. At some point in the book, when Bobby asks Everhards to babysit her son, Joanna is the one keeping an eye on 3 kids while Walter sits and watches TV. From what I could gather from this story, she simply asks her husband to keep an eye on the children and do the dishes once in a while she's busy working or having some sort of social life. Joanna, while not a perfect housewife, she's also very far from being a neglectful one. And what makes the situation situation even worse is that Joanna and Walter have a daughter. When reading the book, I could not help but think whether Walter is planning to do the same thing to his daughter. And in case he doesn't, does he feel okay with the idea of someone else killing his daughter and exchanging her with a perfect little robot with bigger boobs? The only conclusion to all of this that I could reach is that when it comes to men of Stepford, is that they are all some kind of psychopaths. I mean, even if for a moment we ignore the fact that they are working together in order to create these perfect robots that would make their lives oh so much easier, they are also actively killing women, one after another. It's a fully thought through cult-like operation. When you think about Walter as well, this wasn't a split-second moment for him. He moved his family to Stepford with the intention of doing this. He joined the men's club, he lied to his wife about his motivations, he invited fellow men to observe his wife, and make sketches on her appearance. He was so turned on just by the idea of killing his wife and getting a picture-perfect obedient robot instead of her that he jerked off next to his sleeping wife after attending the men's club meeting. And once Joanna started realizing that something is really wrong here, and once she started fearing for her own safety, Walter actively gaslighted her for months. He started to paint her as irrational and hysterical. He manipulated her by pointing out how difficult another move would be on their children. Not that he really cares about his children. If he did, he wouldn't be plotting to kill their mother. A funny thing, however, even though I truly believe Ira Levin to be a feminist, as well as from the first glance we can assume that this book is written to criticize the men of the time, the author doesn't really try to make a stand with this novel. He's just simply telling us the story. In this book, not in any part of it, men are actually being held accountable for their cruel actions. Their wrongdoings are not even admitted at any point of the book. We as the readers can't even claim for sure that Joanna was turned into a robot or that the Stepford men are killing their own and the wives of their buddies on regular basis. We are simply given the story and we are encouraged to make our own conclusions. Sure, if we feel like being optimists today, we can assume that the last scene in which a newcomer observes Joanna putting her groceries in her shopping cart with an insane attention to order and detail is Joanna simply adapting to her life in Stepford. But if we are leaning towards the idea of the men upgrading their wives to more appealing models, that means that in this story that was written to at least partly show the climate created by second-wave feminism, the men still end up outsmarting and overpowering women into a total submission. They still end up winning. But that's just my opinion. What about yours?